Tobias Harris, and Tobias drills it! Sixers up one!
Embiid fakes, Embiid down the lane!
And what is going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Pick Swap Podcast. My name is Sean Bernard, as always, and I'm here with a very special guest today. I do have a ton of respect for this man right now, my guy Stefan, that we had a couple blows over Twitter going throughout that Knicks and Sixers game last night, and he was willing to step in the Thunderdome and come talk about it face-to-face with me. So a ton of respect there. He does some really good work. So off the rip here, Stefan, I want to just toss it to you. What do you got going on? Plug your stuff, and then we can get into this.
Everybody, Sean, thank you so much for having me. Honored. You can find me on Twitter at Stefan Florval, on YouTube, Sports with Flow. That's Sports with FLO. That's me. Here talking Knicks, breaking down games, giving out picks for these NBA games. You can find me there. So let's get into it.
Yeah, love it. And I also do some work over for Fox Sports The Gambler here, the Fox Sports affiliate in Philadelphia. So I might have to link up with you on a couple of stuff there to talk some serious prices as well. But as far as the day, we do got to get into Knicks versus Sixers. That is what brought us here. And I do want to dig in specifically to the take that kind of brought us. But for the start here, I just want to toss to you. Do you want to run a victory lap here? I feel like I owe this your opportunity. It is the 2-0 lead. What's your feelings right now?
No, there's no victory laps. I'm elated. Don't get me wrong. My voice sounds awful, but the coffee this morning was tasting amazing. The Knicks are up 2-0. We go to Philly. The series, the job's not done yet. But no, I feel fantastic. I think that, like, last night, as sad as it is, I'm 36 years old. That was the best Knicks win since 1999. Larry Johnson, Eastern Conference Finals, Knicks Pacers. Like, the revelation being in the building, the fact that the Knicks had their all-timers on the sideline, the fact that everyone's going crazy, the jubilation. That game never happens for the New York Knicks, ever. We've been on the wrong side of that. Everybody knows Reggie Miller, but the fact that the Knicks scored 8 points in the final 30 seconds, I want to say, insanity, just pure insanity.
Yeah, and a ton of respect for the level-headedness there that I'm very much with you, that I think this is a war, that this is a series, that there's still a lot of basketball to be played. I've been pretty open and consistent in my take from the start here that I think the Sixers and Knicks team are the second and third best team in the Eastern Conference, and I think it's unfortunate that really this ended up being the first-round matchup because both these teams, I think, whoever the victor is in this series, and it does seem to be trending toward the Knicks right now, but I'm not really ready to roll over yet. I do think that team takes care of business against whoever comes out of that Bucks-Pacers series relatively easy. And then ultimately it's who can push the Celtics to that point. But I did want to talk a little bit about last night specifically. A lot of takes flying around, not the way that really Sixers fans specifically wanted to see that done. So felt like the Sixers controlled that game for nearly start to finish, a pretty complete 47 minutes of action, and then just absolutely fell apart at the seams. So from your perspective, how do you feel about that from the Knicks side of things? Is this something that you just got to win? A win is a win. You're happy with that? Are you concerned with some of how this series has gone, or what's your mindset for last night specifically?
A lot of thoughts on that one. First off, you absolutely take the win. I know it's like there's a lot of layers to it, but let's first talk about the game overall. The Sixers did control it. Maxey, who's blossoming into an absolute stud right before our eyes, a guy who's the next level player. Just overall, a grander scale of everything. The tragedy of all this to me is that the fact that Joel Embiid has all these injuries and he's gutting through. He's a warrior. He finally has a co-star, in my opinion, that's rightfully due to be along his side to go on a long run. I mean, you talk about second and third best teams. If Joel Embiid was fully healthy and didn't have all these injuries, I think you could be looking at a Sixers team that I don't know if they could beat the Celtics, but they could really give the Celtics a tough run. So first things first, that to me is like the tragedy of all of this. From NBA, I'm a basketball fan. But from the game's perspective, as a Knicks fan, thrilled to be up 2-0 because Jalen Brunson hasn't had a Jalen Brunson game yet. I think the Sixers are doing an excellent job throwing bodies at him with Tobias Harris and Batum, and Oubre is doing an excellent job defensively. But that's what gives me so much confidence as a Knicks fan, because the Sixers aren't the first team that decide to throw a bunch of 6'7" guys with long arms at them and throw 2-3 people and build a wall. Like, Jalen's going to get his at some point here. I'm very confident in that. That's what gives me so much faith. But the thing that also gives me faith from the Knicks fan is the Sixers had that game, but they lose the game on the margins. Why is Tobias Harris playing 16 more minutes than Kelly Oubre when Kelly Oubre is a better defender, better finisher at the rim. And as a Knicks fan, I'm happy to see him go to the bench. That dude has dog in him. Even when his shot's not falling, he's in a fight. He's in a scrap. He gets steals. He gets blocks. He's a guy that I love on my side of things. Why is Nick Batum not playing as much as Tobias Harris, who is in the corner? And every time he shoots the ball, I know all my fans and I were texting all night, leave him open, let him shoot. That's the tragedy of all this, because I think that the Sixers team, they've got some dogs on them. Oubre's one, utmost respect for Kyle Lowry, year 18, scrapping, great defense, steals, floor general, hits big shots. So a lot of respect for the Sixers team. But that's a game where I really think that in the first half specifically, they were only up 7 points, and going into the break, the final minute, Josh Hart hits that pull-up three to make a three-point game. I mean, that's a game where at the break, the Knicks should be honestly down 10, 12 points. So I think that this was a game we saw on the margins is really where the Knicks were able to kind of pull this one out, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And you're preaching to the choir as far as the Tobias Harris stuff, and the whole city of Philadelphia is completely with you. That I don't get the blind loyalty to this guy. I understand the dollar sign attached, but the bottom line is decisions have to be made on what wins basketball games. And that doesn't seem to be exactly what's going down right now. It's ridiculous how long Tobias Harris has been here, and everyone is seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for finally he will be off the books and a free agent this summer. We still got to worry about this series here. And there are adjustments that need to be made that, frankly, I'm kind of disappointed that Nick Nurse hasn't been more proactive in. Even a night like last night, I would have loved to just see Cam Payne get a chance. A guy like Buddy Hield really gave this team nothing. I see no harm, at least try something different. Cam Payne is another guy who he has his weaknesses, no doubt, but he's not afraid of the moment. He'll throw up a couple threes and we see what happens. That type of spark goes a far way. So I don't think it's been a stellar series by Nick Nurse, which is very disappointing because that's one of the biggest promises that I had in this Sixers team is that particular change. But at the same time, there's still a lot of basketball left to win coming home in Philadelphia on Thursday. And I do want to circle to the take that initially brought us here. So you mentioned Tyrese Maxey, you mentioned Jalen Brunson. So specifically what I said in my Sixers Digest video reacting to that win. My take here, I believe that Jalen Brunson is closer to Tyrese Maxey than he is to Joel Embiid. You think I'm wrong on that? And I'll let you just lay out why that is the case here.
Oh, supremely incorrect. Respectfully, of course. Tyrese Maxey's a stud. I'm not trying to minimize Tyrese Maxey. I think that the player he's going to be in 2 years is not even the one he is right now. He's on the ascend. Jalen Brunson, what he's done cannot be understated. The man by himself has won the hardest job in the history of the NBA. If you went back 5 years ago and I said to you, what is the hardest thing to do in the NBA? It'd be to make the Knicks relevant, to make them a good team. In a year, without OG Anunoby for multiple months, lost Mitchell Robinson, who's playing all defensive level for half the season, lost Julius Randle, his second-hand man, in February. The Knicks had 50 wins, the second seed, a guy who was a player of the month in March, a guy who was going to finish top 4, top 5 in MVP, definitely going to finish second team All-NBA, maybe first team, depending where you put Tatum and a couple other guys. Jalen Brunson, to me, even though he hasn't shown it this series, it sounds crazy maybe from a Philadelphia perspective, but to me, it's Joel Embiid's hurt. It's unfortunate, but that's what it is. So with this level of Joel Embiid and Jalen Brunson, I think Jalen Brunson's on par. He hasn't shown it yet. He has to play better. He's shooting 30% through 2 games. I'm not going to excuse that. But the truth is, the guy's a dog. Going back to his days at Villanova, is a proven winner. He's been underestimated time and time again. He went head-to-head with Devin Booker with the Mavs, head-to-head with Donovan Mitchell when he was in Utah, did it again last year, went head-to-head with Jimmy Butler. This guy routinely game in and game out. He's a guy you do not count out. You do not point at him when he's down. Tyrese Maxey, I love Tyrese Maxey. But if you swap teams and you gave Tyrese Maxey the team where the Knicks had at one point of Isaiah Hartenstein and Precious Achiuwa and Josh Hart and DiVincenzo, and you say, I'm giving you this team, what is the result? The pure amount of responsibility night in and night out, I don't think Tyrese Maxey at this point of his career would have been able to replicate what Jalen Brunson did. So I think Jalen Brunson clearly is not on the tier of a healthy Joel Embiid, but I put him slightly underneath. And if I'm being honest, if you asked me down the stretch of these games, who would you rather have, Joel Embiid or Jalen Brunson? I know he hasn't shown it, but it's Jalen Brunson. You have to look at the last 6 years, and if you're being objective, what has Joel Embiid done to ensure faith in you that in a big moment, in a big spot, he will come through? I would just ask that question.
Yeah, no, you make a lot of great points there. And I'll start by saying a lot of this belief comes from, I don't think Tyrese Maxey has received the national praise that he deserves, that I do think he's a guy that deserves to be in these top tier conversations in a way that I think people are just waking up to. I think last night was a perfect example of a lot of people being exposed to that, more so speaking on the national scale than anything here. But when we talk about the Jalen Brunson stuff here, I like Jalen Brunson. He's awesome. I think he's absolutely an all-star. I think he's a first-team All-NBA player, in my opinion, this year. But I also don't think he's a guy that you can win a championship with him as your 1A. That I think there are limitations to guys that are undersized guards. I think when your kind of go-to scoring act is getting to tough two-pointers, that's just not the best sustainable source of offense. And particularly for this series, I keep hearing the takes from Knicks fans of like, well, he's going to get hot. He's played poorly. Don't discount how great the Sixers have been defensively on him. That this is real deal stuff, that they are throwing Kelly Oubre at him. They are hedging pick and roll coverages with Joel Embiid, which is not his traditional coverage, that he's much more accustomed to playing drop. There are things being done to kind of take away his game, which I don't think are getting the proper recognition. And that speaks right back to this, like, where I'm not like, again, he's awesome. He's elite and I love him. And honestly, one of my just like favorite players to watch, period. But I do think the pendulum has swung a little too far on the Jalen Brunson love to where he's fighting above his weight class in some of these conversations.
I hear you on that. I just have the sneaky suspicion we're going to be here. Game 3 is on Thursday. Not saying game 3, game 4. In one of these games, he's going to have the blow-up 35-point game. I know you may say, oh, how can you say this? Why do all these Knicks fans say it? Because we've seen it so many times. We've seen Eric Spoelstra. And this isn't to discredit Nick Nurse and the Sixers. They're doing an excellent job. I think that if you look at the adjustments, like in game 1, Tyrese Maxey, I want to say, had a couple blocks because the way that they're defending him, they're even doing subtle things like Jalen likes to get the defender on his hip and he likes to go back, and he does like to kind of bait for the foul a little bit. But Maxey did an excellent job, I thought, with patience in game 1, not falling for waiting when he'd go for that jump shot, hitting it from behind. I want to say he also hit it from on a drive and a three-point shot. They're doing an excellent job defending him. But that's it. Eric Spoelstra has designed entire walls where Caleb Martin was on him and Jimmy Butler was waiting for him. And Bam Adebayo, we don't have to go into him, but we know that he's not exactly the cleanest player in the league. We have seen this time and time again. And no disrespect to Sixers fans, but you know who you guys sound like? You guys sound exactly how Cavaliers fans sound like 1 year ago when they're like, well, we have Evan Mobley and we have Jarrett Allen. We have Donovan Mitchell. And we're going to build this wall, and Jalen's 6 foot. And how is he going to do this and do that? And I'm like, okay, doubt Jalen at your own peril. Watch what happens. So I think that perhaps he's getting a little worn down from the season, carrying the Knicks the entire second half, heavy usage. But I'm telling you, the Jalen Brunson explosion game is coming. It's coming.
Yeah, I very well could be eating my words on this one, and we will see. But like a couple points I want to hit on there. Number one, you mentioned kind of the getting a guy on the hip, the foul baiting. What is driving me a little insane is the amount of noise that Knicks fans have made about the Joel Embiid whistle coming into this series. And then we're seeing stuff like Jalen Brunson looking like Trae Young with a better PR team right now is pretty absurd to me. That the jump back into stuff. And I mean, this is more of the refereeing discussion than a Brunson thing specifically. And that's always my stance on this stuff, that like, if you want guys to stop doing it, then stop rewarding it, stop calling it. But the inconsistencies on like when grifting is okay versus when it's not is really ruining the sport to an extent. That there's a ton of that. I don't think Brunson is overly, I guess, throughout the regular season I'll speak to, I don't think he was egregious in it. And frankly, he has the quote unquote ethical hoops, as people like to say. I do think this series, and I think it's tied to him being frustrated, that he has been leaning on getting to the line in a way that is a little disappointing to me. And I've been surprised like how much he's leaned into that. So are you seeing that as well? And do you think this is due to the frustration, or is this something that you don't see eye to eye with me on?
I don't see eye to eye with you on this because I don't look at it as like Jalen's doing this to draw fouls as much as he has to be so demonstrative sometimes because he's a stocky guy to get the whistle. This has been a constant theme in the second half of the season. If you look off ball, a lot of plays, there's a series of plays where Nick Batum's guarding him and has his arm on his shoulder. No call.
I have seen that.
Or Kyle Lowry has arm on his hip. And I understand that this entire second half, game after game, Knick fans have complained. Where's the foul? Where's the foul? Jalen Brunson once caught a right hook from an Indiana Pacer with 2 minutes left under the rim, didn't get the call. So the guy has been getting fouled all second half, and he's got these 6'7" guys. And you know what? He has to sell it because they're not calling the whistle on him. So listen, do I want to see an NBA, which resembles more in the past where we saw where James Harden and flopping and Trae Young? No, I don't want that. However, Jalen's getting fouled on a lot of these plays. They're allowing him to play physical. They're picking and choosing when it's allowed, when it's not. Meanwhile, Joel Embiid on the other end, like, these are fouls. They should blow the whistle. But it's really peculiar to me how a guy who's 7 foot, 280 pounds, gets knocked down so often, gets all these whistles, but a guy who's 6 foot, who gets crashed in the lane, who's getting held off of screens, who gets held without the ball, doesn't get calls. Nick Batum has fouled him multiple times. What foul? You have your arm around his hip. So I don't know. It's touch and go. And also, it's kind of rich also as a Knicks fan. I got to throw a shot. Your team employs Joel Embiid and Kyle Lowry, two of the biggest floppers in the last 5 years of this league. Like, it's rich for a Sixers fan to say, wow, this guy sure flops a lot. That's all. That's all.
Yeah, I'm fair. And we just got off the James Harden situation, which I can hand up admit the Harden stuff bothered me more than anything. Like, to me, that was far more egregious than the Joel stuff. Yeah, not basketball whatsoever. But as far as this series as a whole, I got to bring up Josh Hart here. That the heater that he is on is unbelievable and in my mind unsustainable. Now, I do think the Sixers have done him a disservice by allowing him to get going. That, like, it's one thing to live with that as the tactic. It's another thing to essentially roll out the red carpet and giving that guy open 3-pointers, which to an extent they have done. We all hear the phrase how role players play better at home, and obviously he'll be coming to Philadelphia for these next two. What's your expectations for Josh Hart moving forward? Because he truly has been a difference maker thus far.
I mean, the sneaky thing is that Philadelphia is home. Like, all these Villanova dudes are coming right back home. But listen, the guy isn't going to continue to be like prime Klay Thompson hitting. He has 8 threes through 2 games. I think there's some crazy stat he hasn't hit 4 threes in a game in like 2 years. Listen,
it's nuts.
It's not sustainable. But I do think that, like, this is a guy who's a warrior and a gamer. When you disrespect a guy like that and leave him 10 feet wide open, when your head coach openly comes out and says part of the game plan is leaving him wide open by 10 feet and giving him the lane, and we're daring him to shoot, like, you can't disrespect guys like that. I think that the big thing that I've seen in this series, it's like a lot of Sixers fans conflating who's the better team. I think the Sixers have the better top-end talent, but if this was like an NBA street draft and I said, hey, let's draft the top 8 players, Sixers have 2 of the top 3, but like players 4, 5, 6, 7, and maybe 8 are probably all New York Knicks because the Knicks have this system, they're interchangeable parts. And the thing that I would be a little bit concerned if I was a Sixers fan, leave Brunson out of it. Leave Hart out of it. Let's say Hart regresses to the mean. He shoots 1 of 6, 1 of 7 from 3. Lord knows I give out Knicks picks every game. I've given out Josh Hart 2 threes, and my whole rationale was he's going to be open 7 times. He plays in the NBA. He's got to make 2, and he bricked 7 threes. Leave that out. The Knicks still have other players where you've got to be concerned about. For example, Miles McBride hitting 4 or 5 threes isn't a fluke. Like, that's a guy who's, like, in the month of March was like one of the 5 best shooters in the league amongst 3-point shooters who attempted over 8 over the game. Dante can easily get hot. Bojan can easily get hot. So my thing is, and OG Anunoby, I don't think he's a great gifted scorer, but I do think he can give you more punch than what we've seen so far. So my thing would be less so looking at it as like, well, Josh Hart has to fall off, but like look at the Knicks as a totality. In game 1, Mitchell Robinson went crazy. He fell off. Isaiah Hartenstein fills his spot because the Knicks are really like a team. They're not really like focusing on one guy outside Jalen. They're a team. So that's what I would say to that one, looking forward for games 3 and 4 in Philly.
Yeah, I think that's the most fair criticism of the Sixers team is it's so Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey dependent. And I do think a part of that, like I've honestly been very frustrated by the way this offense has looked. I think a great deal of that is because of the time that Embiid missed, that like when you look at how they looked to the start of the season, there was a lot more creativity as far as guys moving off ball. Feels like there was more team concepts. And it's hard when a dude misses 2 months and then you got to figure out how to work in the dude who is going to be your best player and still needs to be going down the stretch. So it has been disappointing. It has been frustrating there. I'm hopeful that a guy like Kelly Oubre is going to be a dude that flips the switch, that he has been really reliable through on the offensive end. I don't want to be too hard on him because, again, he's been excellent defensively, and that's been a driving force why the Sixers team has been in the game. But the bottom line is he's emerged as kind of the 3rd scoring option on this team throughout this year, and they need him to continue doing that. And then Tobias Harris, like, it's difficult having any sort of expectation for this guy at this point.
Can I ask you a question, not to grab the certain one here?
Yeah.
Why does Nick Nurse refuse to just let Kelly Oubre play 40 minutes? He's a frustrating player. Don't get me wrong. He's a guy who could get hot and go like, see what Josh Hart's doing? Like, Oubre could do the same thing. He could go 3 for 4 for 3 and a quarter, just get stupid hot, get 10 points in a quarter. Like, what is his – and also the thing that's, like, sneaky about the Knicks is, like, while they have Hart, Josh Hart's only 6'4". I say it all the time. Like, if OG is grabbing Maxey at the top of the key, like, the Knicks are, like, sneaky, a small team. Like, back then is – Dante, Jalen, Hart, all 6'4", Oubre 6'8", athletic with bunnies. What is his insistence with not playing this guy at least 38 minutes? One time.
I don't get it, to be perfectly honest. The Tobias Harris just blind trust and blind, like, we have to get this guy 35, 40 minutes every night doesn't make any sense to me. And I was very, like, I guess, kind of open-minded with Nick Nurse throughout the entire regular season that my mindset was the goal is to get him playing his best basketball come playoff time. So the route to doing that would not be to be messing with his head and pulling him throughout the regular season. But now push has come to shove here that now every decision matters. And I thought there was progress because you looked at that playing game against Miami Heat. Tobias Harris was not in the closing lineup for the first time all year. And in my mind, it was like, okay, we're here now. That the decision has now been made. But then through the first 2 games, we're back to Toby time and having him the red carpet laid out to get a chance. And my like biggest critique of Harris, and you spoke to like the team construct here, I believe in that full-heartedly. There's not like a defining skill set that Tobias has for why you need him on the floor. That if you want better rebounding, there's guys that do that better. If you want better playmaking, ball handling, defending, there's guys that carry each of those individual characteristics that bring more. That he's very much kind of one of those jack of all trades, master of none players, and that's basically his skill set. But when you're rounding out a roster around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, it is those like supplementary skill sets that I think are very important. The guys like Josh Hart that bring that type of punch. So I don't get it. I do think it needs to change. And like to Toby's, I guess, credit, the bar is on the floor for expectations right now. But I do think like his first half was pretty solid. But yeah, it's very frustrating the Tobias Harris experience here.
Okay. Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's so frustrating because like, he starts hot. Like he does have like a really good post-up game. I thought he started game 2 like pretty efficiently. Like he hit a couple mid-range shots. They left him open in the corner. I want to say he made a couple 3-pointers, 10 points. But I want to say over the course of like the final 16 minutes, he went scoreless, had some great looks. He's in there for his rebounding. He's grabbing rebounds. But, I mean, the elephant in the room we haven't spoke about is the final play of the game. Not the final play, but the Tyrese Maxey inbound play. The thing I look at, a lot of Sixers fans are like staring at the refs. Did Nick Nurse call a timeout? Thing I'm staring at is like, okay, that happened. It's unfortunate. We can get into it. But Dante DiVincenzo missed the 3 after they got the ball. There's 4 Sixers in the lane. What is Nick Batum doing? What's Kyle Lowry doing? What's Tobias Harris doing? No one's boxing out. Yeah. There's a reason why Isaiah Hartenstein is able to crash in like a lunatic over the entire team, get the second chance, dish it back out again. I don't think that's getting enough attention because to me, that's where they're losing the series is on the margins, on little things like that. So, yeah, if Tobias Harris isn't going to be out there for his offense, he should be boxing out. He's a big boy. He's like 6'8", 6'9", box out, force the refs when Hartenstein's coming in, force them to call over the back. Like, I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, you're right. And to talk you through that whole play and sequence for my mindset, so for starters, you're absolutely right that this game ends if you just get a rebound. And that's lead story. That's the headline right there. Number 1 is get a rebound. Number 2 to me, and this guy like has really flown under the radar and basically everything that I've seen, Kyle Lowry is the number 1 guy that I'm upset with. That when you get to that inbound spot, and I agree with the mindset of you want to get the ball early first. The second that does not happen, just call the timeout. And you can point to Nick Nurse. He kind of pump faked and half attempted. I do think he did enough to at least get an acknowledgement there, but I get the refs are in a tough spot watching everything. For Kyle Lowry, you're brought in as this veteran champion point guard to be the guy making the right decisions down the stretch. He should not have thrown that ball to Tyrese Maxey in the first place. And I do think that you have to have like the awareness and just guts and just intelligence to be like, okay, let's relax. We need to get this one right rather than forcing it in there. And this comes on the heels of him missing a free throw right beforehand. So I don't want to be too hard on the guy that he's playing in a far bigger role than anyone expected to this point. And he's been very good for the Sixers team. But I do think that like it's that decision that if you just say quick timeout here, forget all this other nonsense, we're having a much different tone to this discussion today.
Yeah, most definitely. I agree. Yeah, that's what like I look back at that play. I mean, this is like an 18-year vet. Like from like granted, it's a different view from the court, but if you watch from the play-by-play, like the TNT angle, it looks like a disaster before he even inbounds the ball. Maxey gets it. He's failing. I'll be honest. Do I think Hart got him when he comes over? Yes. Do I think it's a foul? Yes. But still, like he's on the floor. Maxey could have called a timeout too.
Yep.
Maxey didn't have to toss the ball. At worst, credit to Kenny Smith on the postgame said it. At worst, that should be a hell ball, jump ball. Like, why is he throwing the ball? So that's why, like when I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, the refs gave the Knicks the game," I'm like, the refs aren't why Hartenstein got the rebound. The refs aren't like even when Dante makes a 3, it's still a 1-point game with 13 seconds. Like the game's still not over, and even after Maxey gets blocked at the rim, it's still a 3-point game. But I want to say like 5.5 seconds. So a lot happens to get to that point. You mentioned the Kyle Lowry missed free throw. Also, I would say you can't have it both ways because at around 2.5 minutes when Dante DiVincenzo grabs a rebound, I thought Kyle Lowry called Dante on the wrist. The Knicks were at 1 point at that point. I think that's a foul. Okay, you let it go. They're clearly letting you play. You're on the road. You got to know time and situation. You're on the road in New York. You can't go into New York, pump faking timeouts, flailing, going to, and then and saying, putting the game in the ref's hand. Put it away. That's my thing. If you want to win the game, you got to put it away. That's how I feel.
Yeah, no, you are right. And I do think the grievance is some loser stuff that, like, what's the best case scenario there that they say, like, you guys are right. Like, let's go play the final 30 seconds. Like, none of that's ever going to happen. So I get being frustrated. I do think that there is some legitimate gripes, and they're pulling up everything in here as far as, like, some pass sequence as well. The Sixers have definitely got the short end of the stick on a lot of situations in these. So I get being upset. But, I mean, it is what it is the unfortunate reality. You now got to dig out of this 0-2 hole. So I guess to kind of wrap things up here, do you think that happens? What's your final series prediction here?
Man. Okay. As happy as I am, as confident as I am, I would be a lying man if I said to you that there's not part of me that's very concerned that this comes back to New York 2-2. I think it'll come back 3-1 because I do think Jalen will turn up. I think Thursday's a Philly spot. Joel Embiid, the extra day of rest. I think the crowd rejuvenates them. One thing that concerns me extremely with the Knicks is the fact that these slow starts are terrible. Shooting 30% in the first half. I think you're looking at, in both games, I looked at it, I'm like, man, Philly should be up 15 points right now. With that crowd, with the role players, as you mentioned, shooting better at home. I think you're going to even see maybe a Tobias Harris spot where he hits a couple three. It's going to be awful or terrible. Like, if he bricks his first two, the crowd will be all over him. If he makes his first two, he'll probably have an amazing game. But I think Thursday's a Philly spot. I think the Knicks get game 4. I think the Knicks finish it off in 6, if I'm being honest.
All right. I don't hate it. I do think that this is a war. I think everybody and a lot of the New York fan base celebrate like this is over. Pump your brakes a little bit.
Definitely isn't.
A lot of ball left to play. So I guess to lay out my final prediction here, I've been Sixers in 6 from the beginning, and I'm rocking with it still. That I think they have a pretty convincing win on Thursday, more in just a have-to spot where everything goes right. I think the role players do get hot, hit some shots. Maybe we see Buddy Hield come alive. I think the Sunday game will be war all over again, come down to the wire, but I do think the Sixers find a way. Then we're heading back to New York 2-2. And if you sneak game 5 with a little momentum behind you, then you can close things right back off in Philadelphia again. So as much as it's been frustrating, I do think that this is going to be a fun series, probably my favorite, just from a pure basketball perspective of any of these first-round matchups. So we'll see how it all goes down. But, Stephen,
I could just say one final thing really quick. The one thing I would look at if I was a Sixers fan, Jalen Brunson. I don't got to tell you people there. You guys have seen him grow up since he was a baby. That guy's a dog. The one thing I've noticed is he'll have these off games at home and on the road. There's always someone that says something to him that annoys him. It happened against the Bucks, happens against the Spurs, happens against the Heat. And he does this thing. You see him do the celebration to the crowd. Did it in Boston. Whenever someone in the front row says something to him, it's like he's staring at that guy the entire game. And every shot he'll make, he'll look over at the guy every time. That's what would scare me if I'm a Sixers fan, because someone in that front row or second row is going to say something to this guy, going to poke the bear. He's shooting 30%. Leave him be. That's what I would say. If I was a Sixers fan, leave the guy alone. He's shooting 30%. He looks off kilter. Oubre is doing a great job. Maxey, the scheme's working. Just shut up. I think he's going to get going, but we'll see. We shall see.
Yeah, we will. That's definitely that's a possibility. I'm not ruling that out. That he does scare me still, as much as I am downplaying him a little bit here, and still stand by that. Like, I think there's more limitations than he's been given credit. This full focus has to maintain that this is not a change your game plan here. Stick with what's working. Keep throwing bodies at him, and make sure that is at the top of the scouting report for however many games are left to play in this series. But before we get out of here, Stefan, what else you got going on? Take me through it fully one more time.
Once again, Sean, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. Next Twitter, ease up my guy off a little bit, man. It's all sports, man. We all just having fun, man. We're two passionate fan bases, but you can find me on Twitter. Yeah, man. You can find me on Twitter at Stephen Florval, on YouTube at Sports with Flow. If you want to follow, if you want some NBA picks, I give out picks on my Twitter page. I'm affiliated with Props.cash. You don't got to pay for anything. If you want to tell, if you want some looks, Pat Beverly rebounds tonight if you want to tell something for some fun. But Sean, thank you so much for having me, man. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation today.
Absolutely. You guys make sure you check out all that. You can check the links for all Stefan's stuff below as well. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button here, dropping a like, and any comments you have for me. We'll be talking next time right here on the Pick Swap Podcast. Peace.